Welcome back to episode 344 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, there's no gas tonight, but never mind. We are joined by an excellent guest again from the United States of America. Mark, did you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about why we've invited you on the podcast?
Hey, Beans, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, ultimately right now, my team and I have been heavily focused on helping independent artists, as independent artists ourselves. So ultimately the goal here is to spread the word about Make Our Music and our platforms, FanFlowy and DistroFlowy.
Indeed. Now, you know a thing or two about music yourself, being a drummer in a popular band. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that band?
Yeah, so I play in a band called Prospect Hill. We're an alternative metal band that has been together since ultimately, almost before high school. We started this band, so it's pretty wild. I was actually just putting together content to put out on our socials that showcases my guitar player and I playing our talent show in 8th grade together, and it's just crazy, So yeah, I've been at this a long time. I've been through all the stages from, before the digital era to all the way through the digital era, starting with MySpace. And, I've been able to build a career with my band and be successful with it. We've had, charting Billboard albums, charting Billboard songs at radio. We've signed deals with independent labels, major labels. We've signed licensing deals with, Fox NFL, ESPN, and we've toured all over the US and overseas. So we've done quite a bit.
I mean, that is an understatement to say you've done quite a bit. That's a heck of an achievement. So when you and your pal there from school started this band, you can't have dreamed, or could you have dreamed, that it would go this way?
It's funny. It's like when I was a kid, the thing that was the catalyst was like my father was a drummer and he had a drum set in the basement and he played in a cover band, and he came home one day and he threw a CD at me and said, "Hey, check this out. I went to high school with this guy." And I said, "Oh, wow." I think I was in 6th grade, and I put the CD in and it blew me away. I was like, wait a minute, this guy? He's like, yeah, I went to, school with him my whole life. I went to high school with him. And it was the original CD of Godsmack's first album, a rock band called Godsmack. And they're from my city, right? And the lead singer, Sally, grew up on Prospect Hill, and which is the name of my band. And so, that kind of put it into perspective that it was possible, right? As a kid, I was like, whoa, somebody from my area made it this big and made music this great, right? And so that put me on a path to like, I want to do that. I want to be in a rock band, and I want to do what he's doing, and so that's kind of what set me down there. And, ultimately you have goals, and your goals, like my whole thing is like in life, you got to be kind of a little more detailed with your goals, right? When you write them down. Because when I was a kid, I said, hey, I want to be in a touring rock band. I want to own a recording studio. I want to manage artists. I want to have my own record label. And I've done all of those things. And I wish I detailed some out a little bit more though, So
no, that is phenomenal. And I get what you're saying. Sometimes when you see someone who comes from your background and they achieve something that, that literally appears only available to a gifted few or a lucky few, whichever way you want to look at it. But we're going to look at that a little bit later and just see how much of it is luck and how much of it is, like, say, planning, putting it out there. So for yourself then, where did your first big break come then? Where was the point where you look back and you think, that was my opportunity, this is where it changed for me?
Well, there was one catalyst where, we were putting out records that we thought were like finished recordings, right? We were putting out songs that ultimately, when I look back, they sounded like demos, right? And we were just, we had no backing financially. It's not like any of us. We came from a very poor area in Massachusetts, and we had no family backing, money to get any of the stuff off the ground, and so we were just kind of doing what we could, and any money that we made, if we were all working, we'd put in towards it. And then I actually had a cousin at the time that was doing engineering, and so he helped us out, he took care of us, and we went in and we recorded some songs and we started putting them out. And they, when I listen back, I'm like, wow, those are crap, right? But we had to do something, we had to get them out, right? And so we had, we started building a foundational fan base from that, just because we were kids in high school and people were gravitating towards us performing live, and that was great. It was helping. And then, as people got older, then it was to the bar scene. So then now we start going to the bar scene, and we're actually playing in bars where we actually couldn't drink. So they were Xing our hands and making us stay in certain places, and, corralling us so we couldn't have a beer or sneak one in. And, so that's, there was a turning point where it's like, okay, now we're kind of entering a different league of just playing for the high school kids, right? Now we're opening for nationals. And so we need to have better recordings. And so we ended up working with, at the time, who was like one of the biggest producers in the area, this guy, Anthony Resta, who's now a great friend and colleague of mine. And he worked with like Collective Soul, Duran Duran, Blondie. He's worked with Elton John. He's, one of those guys that has been in the game a long time, and he understands how to write a song and produce it and get it to that quality where it's major label level. And we, took the dive into saying, okay, it's time for us to, step up our recordings. And we ended up finding the money to go and invest and do one song with him. And we did one song, and that changed the perception of the band pretty much overnight. So, in regards to like when did things start to elevate, it was that moment when we recorded that song, and it became, noticeable to the rest of the world that this was a serious act and they weren't just some high school band with a demo. And that song ended up doing a lot of great work for us by, acquiring fans a lot easier because it was a great song. And so our, I guess our presence on MySpace at the time started to grow and became one of the number one unsigned bands on MySpace. And because of that, that attention from that song, we drove fans in, but it also got the attention of some radio stations. And there was one station in particular up in Bangor, Maine that found it, and they put us on full rotation. And they were playing that song like, almost like 15 times a day, And so that was one of those turning points where things started to move in a very quick direction upward.
That's fantastic. I know what you say though when you listen back to your early stuff. When I listen back, sometimes every now and then I'll go back and listen to early episodes of this podcast because I started off doing it by myself, and I cringe. I cringe when I listen to the stuff that we put out there, thinking that this is, I remember being really proud when it first went out, and now I listen back to it, I think, yeah, I should probably delete that really. Because if someone tunes in and that's the first one they listen to, they ain't gonna listen to anything else. But
Well, it's part of your journey. It's like what got you there, right? And it's a ladder, right? You got to get up those rungs.
yeah, amen. Yeah, you're quite right. You're right there. And I like to think the stuff that we put out there is a little bit better these days. Although we get the odd email that says otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. You
But
have to
that's
get those.
yeah, yeah. That's a big part of it though as well. Is that, you've got to listen to your feedback. You've got to take it on the chin because everybody's got an opinion these days. Now you say that you were on MySpace, which obviously was one of the early forerunners of social media. How pivotal was and is social media for you? Where you are now.
It's very pivotal. Like ultimately, like MySpace was the catalyst for us learning how to build fan bases through in the digital realm, right? It was us understanding that there was a strategy there where at the time you could add 500 people a day before they capped you. We would add 500, we would message all 500, we would comment on all 500 of theirs wall. So we're doing like 1,500 manual actions a day. And we had hundreds of thousands of friends on there, fans, and we had millions of streams, you know, thousands and thousands of comments on our wall, and we had an inbox full that we were just communicating back and forth with all these fans. And at the time my father was managing us, and he was heavily invested into that as well with us, so he was a big factor into that. And so we would be communicating with these fans, we'd be sending them to the website, we'd be selling merchandise, I'd be going to the post office like 2 to 3 times a week to fulfill the orders. Then we started selling CDs out in the local CD album stores at the time. And so things started to move quickly, and the fan base that we met online started to then show up live. And so we went from 50 people at our live show in our backyard to then eventually 1,200 people. you know.
Yeah, I mean that is in itself is a pretty big transition, isn't it? You know what I mean? How quickly did that happen?
It was like within, I'd say 2 to 3 years of hard work, especially on the MySpace front, and just consistent building, playing shows consistently, and then making those shows special. And then we were also utilizing the ability to open up on some bigger national shows to get in front of larger audiences on one swing. So we were doing multiple things, but it was all kind of accumulating. So within 2 to 3 years, we started positioning ourselves to put, 300 people into a venue, then 500 people, then 600, then 800. And then eventually we were able to put 1,200 people in there.
That's impressive. That is impressive. I take my hat off to anybody who puts himself out there and actually doesn't give up. Were there any points during that journey where you thought, no, this isn't going to work for me? I maybe need to knock this on the head and find another career.
Yeah, I mean, we did go through a stage where the band took a giant hiatus. We kind of did take a step back, and we signed a deal in 2000, I believe it was like 2013, 14. And it was supposed to be the deal that was going to change our lives, right? It was a major team that was involved. It was the full radio team for Capitol Records that stayed together. There was major money behind it all. And this label at the time was poised to be like the next Roadrunner, which was the label that was behind Nickelback and Slipknot. And so this was supposed to be the next label of that caliber, and we were supposed to be the focus band. And we signed with them, and we had a song at radio that was crushing at the time. It was already getting early picked up, and it was before the impact date. So you set a date when the single's actually going to go to radio, and we had stations picking it up beforehand because of all the work we did touring nationally and making friends. And we ended up having Octane, which is Sirius XM Octane's it's a big rock station for active rock. They picked it up early, and we were charting on the big ends. And so all these things were working for us, right? And I think it was like a week before Christmas, we put together our CD release show, and we had like 900 people there, right? Which was it's a tough week. Like everybody didn't expect us to even do that. And ultimately what happened was the everything that the label promised, they couldn't fulfill. Money went missing. People got fired that were supposed to be part of the project, and so they basically nullified their contract. Which we were in a position to sue. We threatened to sue. We got our masters back, but that really kind of, you know, it was disheartening, and it was like it was a big hit. It was a big hit emotionally to the whole team, and it was a big hit in regards to our momentum, right? Because we had all this stuff that everything was climbing, and then all of a sudden, boom, the day of the impact date on the radio, the team's gone, and we had no radio team, and the single's kind of just out there floating around on its own. And so, it was one of those situations where, I personally had to step back. We all took a step back, and the band kind of went on a hiatus for years. And we occasionally would come out and we do a local show, but it wasn't turned on, right? We had to it was one of those moments where it was like it was pretty much we did kind of quit, but we kept it alive to a point where we were able to breathe life back into it years later and say, okay, let's turn it back on. And that's kind of where we're at now with it.
That's cool. So you quit without quitting. Really, it was there, and it was always ready to be picked back up again when the moment was right. In other words,
Yeah, like the fan base wouldn't let it die, right? They would not let it die. And so we would play a show, like 2 shows a year, and it would still be locally. We did a couple flyouts, and there would still be 500 people at the shows a night. And we put out a single here and there, and it would get great reception. And so it's funny because one of the songs that we did put out while we were kind of on a hiatus is one of our biggest songs ever on streaming, because it came out during kind of the Spotify era. And it was a testament to like the foundation we built a really strong foundation and a connection with those fans that they wouldn't let die, and so we couldn't let it die either.
yeah, yeah, I get you. That's incredible, and I know what it's like. I'm a big fan of music. I don't mind a little bit of rock. Obviously being British and from not far from Manchester, I love the Manchester music scene here. There's some huge bands not too far away from where I was, like the Stone Roses, Joy Division, Happy Mondays, the Smiths. They're all formed, just a stone's throw from where we live, and that's the kind of music I grew up listening to and still listen to today. And I'm taking my nephew to go see Morrissey later this year. It'd be his
Nice.
first time he's seeing him. I'm taking my daughter to her first gig this weekend. A guy from Liverpool called Jamie Webster. So I get it. You know what I mean? I saw Jamie Webster for the first time when literally nobody knew who he was, and then the last time I saw him, there was 30,000 people in Sefton Park in Liverpool, and it was a great day out. And to be able to share that experience with my daughter is going to be incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah, we were actually just in Manchester. We just performed out there.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, we were out there in May. And we were in the UK. It was unbelievable. It was my first time out there. It was awesome. I loved it. We were in London, we were in Camden area. And we were in Manchester and Wolverhampton. And then we ended up in Scotland as well. So it was great. It was a great time.
Oh, mate, I was in Camden in May myself. You never know. I could have walked past you in the street. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, we played the under was it the underground or the underground or something like that. The underworld.
Oh,
Are you
cool.
familiar with the venue? It's a cool venue. It was pretty badass.
Now, London's about 200 miles south from me, but we were down. I was down there on a trip. My cousin was over from Texas, and we were trying to visit as many historic boozers as we could. And we found ourselves in Camden because obviously there's a very famous market there that we wanted to visit.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. I spent the whole day in there. I ended up spending way too much money that I shouldn't have. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
it's easily done, very easily done.
Yes.
So taking you back to those early days, then what was the biggest lesson that you learned from trying and failing and trying and succeeding?
I think the biggest lesson was always like trust your own instincts. Ultimately, like you said something earlier, which was great. It was like take feedback, right? But don't let it like dictate exactly what you're going to do, right? So we had a lot of opportunities and we had a lot of people pushing us certain ways. And when I look back, it was always like obviously hindsight's 50-50, right? But when I look back, some of those splits in the road where we knew in our hearts where we wanted to go with it, but we took advice that we probably shouldn't have is kind of what led us astray. And so I think, always kind of trust your gut. And I think, and allow there be to allow tears, I guess, in regards to how you take feedback, right? Like level them at a certain level. Like your immediate team, it should be tier one. So what everybody's saying in your immediate team right there is tier one advice. And then, then there's the next level below that, which is like maybe some advisors. And then from there, it's the general public, right? And then it's like the people that, so, obviously take feedback, right? And take critique, but don't always allow it to sway you one way or the other if tier one really feels a strong way.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's solid advice. I always think I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, by the way, so I apologize from the area that you're in. Probably not a Steelers fan, I'm guessing. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers, who's currently our quarterback, said something like, don't worry about criticism from people you wouldn't ask for advice from. And I think that is a great way of thinking about it too.
Yes, I agree. Yep, and he's totally right with that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's right on that one. I'll give him that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just what is it like now? Obviously, you've been around for a good long while. You were selling records, you're selling CDs, and obviously now everything is about streaming, which has entirely changed the way things are marketed, processed, and for the most part, how musicians get paid. What difference has that made for yourself?
It's different because it's different on a side where you know, when you're releasing records, the idea is to get it out and get it onto the streaming platforms and then have it consumed enough where it starts to equate what you would potentially make on like a single sale or an album sale back in the day, right? So you have the potential to make more money in streaming, right, over time than you did with selling a CD or an album once to that person, because that person's going to listen. If they're a true fan, they're going to listen beyond the amount of streams that it would take to get that 99 cents or $15 on that album, right? So, but it's about from point A to point B and the cash flow there. So it takes a while to accumulate those streams from that one fan over time to then make that X amount of money that you would make in one grab back in the day. And so it's really a cash flow issue that everybody doesn't realize. You make more money over time as listeners compound and they stream your music, but on the immediate, that's where the problem is. So that there's a gap there on cash flow that artists used to be able to sell the CD, get the money, and then reinvest it back into their career. Now it's not like that, right? So you got to figure out different ways to raise money, right? Or give offers to your fans to make that money in that gap period. And so it's about figuring that stuff out and learning the system and understanding that. And then also it's like every time you put out a song, there needs to be strategy and meaningful around it. There needs to be content associated with it across social so that you can, obviously drive it home to your existing fan base, but then also pick up new fans, right? Between releases to continuously grow everything you're doing. And then having that one-on-one fan connection, which is, acquiring their phone number and their email and having a relationship with them direct is the most important part, especially someone like me who's got a little PTSD from MySpace. One day it was there and then the next day it was gone, and so, these are all the things that I focus on in the new era and ultimately ensure that, as Prospect Hill puts out new releases, because now, we're consistently putting out music again, we're checking off all these boxes.
Yeah. So, I mean, how difficult is it though? How difficult is it to make yourself that available to your fans? There's a level of not feeling that they're intrusive, that you want your privacy and you want your time to yourself, but at the same time, you need to get. I mean, the idea of being famous doesn't appeal to me at all. The idea of giving up that little bit of myself that I keep private and having everybody interested and trying to take a little bit of a piece of you away with you. How difficult is it to find that balance?
It's definitely, you gotta manage it. I think what you gotta do is you gotta put systems in place and you gotta put parameters and boundaries on a personal level. And then obviously with, so you're saying okay, this is how I'm gonna make content, this is when I'm gonna do it, and this is what I'm gonna, give to my fan base. And you figure out what that does and how that makes sense within your brand, and then also you as a person, right? And so and then ultimately at the end of the day, the way I look at it is like, these people are also, for them to even care about us at all is very humbling to me, right? It's like, oh my God, someone actually cares about what we do it's wild. And so like giving them, at least, some minimum level of who we are on a content level, on a live stream level, on a meet and greet level, it's really not much because at the end of the day, we wouldn't even exist without them. So I'm happy to do it. And then ultimately it's just, scheduling things right, and understanding that. And so, for example, when we have a new release coming out, I make sure that all the guys set aside the night before that we're going to go on a live stream so that we can be live with our fans as the song drops, and we can be on there and we can be messing around, we can be talking, fans can message us and hop in, and that makes it, super engaging for them. And it's also like a set thing that they can expect. And because it's not like hey, we got to do 7 meet and greets that week, blah blah blah. It's really just that one, and we can hit everybody. It's one to many, which is nice, especially in the digital era.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. It's a little bit different now in terms of by literally jumping on a live stream, you can be in a million places at once, rather than the traditional musicians maybe 20, 30 years ago literally would be on the road 363 days a year, maybe get Christmas and Boxing Day at home. But so
Exactly.
doing gigs, doing live tours, coming over to the UK. I'd like to hear about that actually. What that experience was like. How good was that to get over here and meet fans outside of the US?
It was amazing. It was, it was overdue. And we were supporting my business partner Sean Lichtenstein's band called Lansdowne, and they've been doing really well overseas. They signed a deal with a German label a few years ago, and that label ensured that they set up a system for them so that they can continuously come out there. And they opened for some bigger bands, and then now they're headlining, right? And they're doing well, and they got a number. I think their single right now is number 3 in Germany at the moment. Right now, it's killing it, and they've had multiple songs charted Germany. And so we went out there with those guys, and it was great because we got exposed to their fan base. And it was also great because we also met a lot of our fans that have been waiting years and years for us to come out there, which, it's funny because we've been around so long, we see the data on the streaming and on our socials where it's saying that we have fans in the UK, and it's showing we have fans in Germany and Europe, and it just doesn't seem real because we've never been there, right? And so every now and then you get a message from them, but ultimately it was just wild. And you get out there and these people come to the merch table after you play and they're like, wow, I've been listening to you guys for 8 years. It's amazing to finally meet you guys. And we're like, whoa, this is crazy. We totally forgot, it's like, and so that was an amazing experience, and it felt really good. And it was like, okay, everything that we've been doing, there's so many people out here in the world that have been listening to us that still haven't experienced us live because just obviously geographically it just doesn't work. And so it was really nice to make that connection and cross the pond and get out there and play for these people. unbelievable. And the appreciation they had for us, because maybe it's because we're American and we came over there and we took the time, but the level of appreciation was amazing. And it was, you know especially in Germany, where we were the opener on that tour. Everybody was there. Every sold out show in Germany, which pretty much all of them were. I think it was we were 9 on 9 or 10 of 10, and from our first song on, the show was sold out. So it wasn't like America where people wait to go to see the headliner and they kind of sit at the bar or they don't come into the venue. Everybody was there right away on our first song. It was unbelievable.
Well, that's the one thing I do know about Germans is that they're very, very serious about their rock music. It's huge out there. They love their rock. One of the guys who lives down the road from me, he's a big fan of rock music as well, and he's been to Germany just for that experience, just to go and see the bands live out there, just to experience the German audience. They take it very, very seriously.
It was great. And even UK fans, like we had, it's funny because UK was not as big as the German turnout, but they were still solid shows. And those people that came out, like we actually sold more merchandise on the UK shows than anywhere else. And we had the smaller crowds. But those people like connected with us on a big level. Like our music really resonated with the UK audience. And it makes sense because there's bands like, Bad Omens and Bring Me to the Horizon that are crushing it out there, and that's kind of where our new music kind of lies, and it sits kind of in that genre. So it was pretty surprising.
Yeah, it's strange when you actually put a face. You've got the digits there telling you the people are listening, and then you actually to physically see them and make them tangible must be curious.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was one of those moments where everyone's kind of just looking at each other like, wow, this is pretty cool.
It's one of the closest I can put it to is the video version of our podcast isn't huge, but the audio does get listened to a fair bit, and we're listened to 122 different countries. Now, when I'm sat here in a small town of Cheshire recording this podcast every week, the idea that this thing goes out and is listened to in 100, I didn't even know there were 122 countries. And then you see like the figures that were in Vietnam at the minute, and Canada. It's incredible. We struggle to get our heads around it sometime. And I'd love to go out there and visit those places and see some of the people who listen to this podcast and just ask them what they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. It's a big world, and with the capabilities now of, digital technology and streaming, I mean there's nobody you can't reach now.
Yeah, yeah. Got to ask you in terms of being a musician. Did you always want to be a drummer, or did you ever fantasize playing the guitar?
Always wanted to be a drummer. There was the drum. I had a guitar and I had a drum set in the basement, and I always gravitated more towards the drums. I'm more of like an aggressive type of human, so like hitting those drums, I hit them real hard. It's like what I'm known for. So it's always been therapeutic for me to beat them up.
Exercise a few demons at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Incredible, incredible. How long did it? Because it is a skill. It is a skill. We've had another band on here, and a friend of mine, he plays the drums, and they don't do it anywhere near the level you guys do, but they are, they're fairly large on the local scene around here, but they mainly do covers. They don't do their own music. And he plays the drums, and I think the same sort of thing. He's a sheet metal worker as well. He's got a lot of physical energy. He wants to get out of himself.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is, man. It's like it's very therapeutic and cathartic. And as a kid, I saw my father playing too, so it was great. And I also had an uncle that played. And so it was like one of those, I just gravitated towards it. And I always, when I would be watching a band, I'd be watching the drummer. It was the most interesting part to me.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not musical in any way. I'd love to be able to play a musical instrument. I don't think I have the level of patience to sit down and do it. I bought numerous guitars and ended up giving them away or selling them. Would have loved to have learned an instrument. Tried keyboard a couple of times. Just wasn't for me. I don't have that level of talent, which is why I do a podcast now instead.
Yeah, playing an instrument, you got to like really want to do it. You got to really love it. And because it is like one of those like love hate relationships where it takes time to learn. And then even when you do learn, you get to a certain level, somebody else will play and you'll be like, wow, I'm not even good. It still happens to me today where it's like, I'm just constantly being humbled. I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrible, but it's like, and then you go, okay, all right, let me learn something new. And so it's like one of those things you can continuously always, get better at no matter what, and you can continuously grow at. And so that's what I like about it as well. And it's the same, I kind of, there's certain things in my life that I pursue in that way. And like, I train jujitsu and I compete. And that's like one of the other things I do, in my life. And it's the same idea. So I relate it to drumming where it's like, you learn the foundation and then you kind of get to different levels and tiers from that. And, you get to like a black belt level in drumming. And then from there, it's like when you're a black belt, there's still levels of black belts above you that are amazing world champions. And so it's like same idea as like, I could be a professional touring drummer, national recording artist, Billboard charting drummer, and still there's people in that same pool that are just like light years ahead of me. So it's like there's still stuff to learn.
It's interesting you say about the martial arts, because this is one thing that there's a bit of a common theme when we've had guests on to talk about what they do. We've had a guy on called Jamie. He played in a band as well. He's got a little bit of music on Spotify, and he competes at jiu-jitsu. I think he won a tournament. He won his first ever tournament that he took part in. And we had a guy on called Thomas Karkiri as well, who's a Baltimore police officer, who also big at martial arts, and another one from Miami-Dade, a guy called Bert Gonzalez. And the one thing they all have in common is that discipline, to thrive, to do better, and that level of control. And interestingly enough, a couple of those guys that I spoke about have written books as well, which takes a level of discipline itself.
Yeah.
What was that
Sure.
like for someone who's creative like yourself? Obviously, here's your book cover here now. If I bring it up on the screen here, so the indie artist's compass: navigating the journey to musical success. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a process for sure. That was Sean and I wrote that together. My business partner with Make Our Music, one of them, and him and I, just wanted to create basically a clear path for an independent artist on, basically from, writing their songs to recording them, producing them, to the strategy behind releasing them and marketing them, and ultimately, even, getting out there and performing and having, all the experience that we've both had throughout our years of doing this and all of the ups and downs. And I like to tell everybody, like, we've been out there in the world doing this for so long. Like, we know where the landmines are because we've blown our legs off doing it, right? We've run into every snag you could possibly run into. We've had all the issues. We've been burned by this guy, burned by that guy. We've wasted money here. We blew money there. We've gone down the wrong path for too long here. And so, like, we know enough, and there's a clear path on how to get to where we are a lot faster than we did. And so that's what this book is really about. It's really to kind of give that guidance to somebody that's just coming out, because ultimately I wish I had that when I first started. I remember finishing my first album, and at the time my first album was produced by my other business partner, Jim Foster, right? Jim's the man, and he was my first music producer. And I remember finishing the album with him, and I go, "Hey Jim, now what? Now what do we do with this album?" And he goes, "Beats me, man." And I was like, he's like, "I don't know, good luck." And I was like, wow, and that always stuck with me. Like, I wish there was at least somebody out there that could have been like, hey, go talk to this person, or hey, go read this book, or go check out this website. It's just something that was a trusted, guide in the industry to get you to that next step. And it didn't exist. So I said, that's what we're going to be. That's what Make Our Music is. And we're going to be that guide. And that's the Indie Artist Compass, to guide them the proper way. And here, you finish that record and you want to know what to do. Like, I want music producers, when somebody asks that music producer, I want them to say, hey, go check out Make Our Music. Those guys are crushing it. They're trustworthy. They're going to set you down the right path and help you out. And that's, they have all the tools for you. They have the guidance, the books, the education. And that's what we're doing. We're we put together something that didn't exist because we needed it to.
That's very good, to be honest with you. I always admire people who will go and do something like that. So your motivation was ultimately you needed that guide, you needed that assistance, you needed somebody to tell you what the next steps were. And rather than letting somebody else struggle along the path, you've done the decent thing. It's an act of generosity as well. Don't get me wrong. Of course, you're going to charge for it because you've got to make a little bit of money on the way. But by offering a guide out there to people, I think that's fantastic. It's a great way of doing it. There's no surely, I mean, there's no sure signs or no sure path rather to success, but every little hint that takes you in the right direction has got to be a big help, hasn't it?
Of course, yeah, and there's just things that that are known that if you do X, this is gonna.
We seem to have lost our guest. Hold on a second. Bear with us, folks. Hopefully, we'll be having him back on the stream very, very soon. There you go. Lost you there for a second.
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I'll edit that bit out of the audio. Don't you worry about it. So anyway, tell us a little bit about there what you were saying. I'll let you answer that question again. I'll edit
I think
that
I
bit out.
lost the audio. Let's see what's going on.
I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Nothing. No.
I can hear you.
Let me.
This is a shame because we were just about to hear about his book and how good it was and how useful it was for people. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Any audio?
Yeah, I've got your audio. Have you got
Oh
my audio?
man, I don't know what's going on. Hold on. Sorry about this. I'm not sure what's happening.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
Oh,
about
what
it.
happened here? Someone.
Hello.
Is it working? Do I got you?
You got me. You got me.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Don't worry about it. I'll edit that bit out of the audio. Don't worry about it. I'm not too precious about the video anyway, so we're fine. So go on then. Tell me a little bit about the book then, as we were just saying.
Yeah, so ultimately, the book is really just it's a guide for our, independent artists that are on their way up so that it keeps them on a path, on a straight line to, basically, producing music, releasing music, building a fan base, and then all the details that are inside of that. And doing it in a streamlined way without, blowing money or blowing time ultimately.
And does it give you guidance then on how to use social media as well? Because I do think that's one of those things people probably we're guilty of it ourselves. We'll do some random posts on social media, expect some traction from it, and get very little. We tend to use social media as a platform for people who listen to the podcast, and then we'll find the social media afterwards, and they can view what we're doing and what we've done. Does it give you that level of guidance how to utilize that?
Yeah, yeah. So we do go into that in the book in regards to utilizing it as, a way to, find new fans, find new audience and capture them so that you now have ownership of that audience. So ultimately we look at social media as a top of funnel, element where you're basically showcasing to people that never heard of you, finding them. And then once you capture them, you can nurture them through email and text message, but then also still nurture them through social media with continuous, posting and consistent, content that you're putting out. So there's two ways to look at it, in regards to how we explain it in the book. But ultimately, the way I've always been successful with it is making sure that you're finding the audience through social media, and then driving them and getting them and capturing them yourself so that you can communicate directly with them.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that social media does do. It gives you, a direct link with people, and it also gives them a direct link with you as well, adversely, which can be, which can obviously be a massive bonus while you're trying to build your brand. And is that a big part of it as well? Sort of creating a brand for yourself, rather than just a band, you're also a brand that something can, the people can identify with.
Yeah, 100%. You got to look at yourself as a brand. It's like, what's your mission? Why are you even doing this? What's your purpose? What's your story behind it? What's your look? What's your aesthetic? All of those things come into play, and you got to, everything down to like what font you're going to be using across all of the, digital assets. What's the logo that you're going to be using during that time period of releases? What's the aesthetic? What's the coloring? What's the video look like? And what's the messaging and what other type of content and other collaborations you're going to use. Those things are important, and setting those guidelines and building like a brand Bible for yourself is very, very important. In so that A, you understand and know who you are, and then B, whoever you work with knows and understands who you are as well.
And it's got to be authentic, hasn't it? It's got to be truly yourselves.
100%. I mean, I tell everybody to lead with exactly who you are, and be truthful and be honest. And honesty is always going to be the thing that people actually, you know, attach to, right? That's what most people want. And when you're authentic, that's where you get the most reaction. You get people to really get behind you because, ultimately I tell everybody like, for instance, like if you're a skater and that's part of your branding, make sure you're putting that out there because other people that skate that like that type of music are now going to be attracted to you and be attached to you. If you're someone that's into fashion, use show that element to you and incorporate that with your music so that now you're be exposing another piece to you, but now you're also finding people that are similar, that have a similar, taste in fashion as well. So it's all about like, what is these other things too, especially in this world now and with social media, it's like, what are these other elements? And like, one of the greatest examples, like we all know about Snoop Dogg. Why do we know about Snoop Dogg? It's like, look at him now. Now he's become like a marijuana brand, right? That's what he is, but it started with him being authentic. He's in the booth smoking weed and that's what he was preaching and singing about.
That he did, and it certainly worked for him. You can't knock it. When you think of Snoop, that's exactly what you think of, isn't it?
Yeah, so he's a great example.
Yeah. So go on then. Tell when people think of you, what is it that you want them to take away? What is it? What's the image that you sell to people?
You know, the image that I've always sold is like my authentic self of, you know, I like to help people. I like to, you know, give advice. I like to, you know, motivate others. Right. And that's really where I've always been, you know, in regards to like with my team and in regards to everybody around me. And I'm genuinely happy to help people. Like that's one of the things. I get on phone calls every day with artists, and even if they don't work with us, that's fine with me. You know, like we get so many, my call schedule is like filled, you know. And so my biggest thing is, you know, not every artist is going to be able to work with us based off of where they're currently at, but, you know, or they might not want to work with us either where they're currently at. But ultimately, if they can leave that call with a piece of advice or something to help them, I'm happy with it. And that's like my goal, is to always at least give them advice and something to move them further along, you know. And so that's, you know, part of my branding. And then ultimately, you know, like I like to be known as somebody that's a creative person that's done some great creative things and created some things. I'm a creator at heart, whether it's, you know, I'm writing or producing a song, or I'm creating a piece of content, or I'm writing film scripts, or I'm building and creating businesses. That's ultimately, you know, where, you know, I feel like my legacy is always going to be at, is like I'm a creator first and foremost.
I mean, clearly, like you say, you want to help people. This is, you know, the whole purpose behind this book is helping people. You know, that you don't need to do. So that number one, I got to congratulate you on that. So tell us about the other strings to your bow, though, when you're building businesses and writing film scripts. I mean, I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, my team and I were like, we're constantly creating, you know, and we you know, we have multiple businesses that we're part of. You know, we have, you know, other ventures that we're business partners in with other people with their ventures. And so like there's so many moving parts into what like we do. Ultimately, make our music is obviously our focus, right? But you know, we create music videos for artists, we produce songs and produce records for other artists as well. That's something we've been doing for years. And then, you know, recently within the past, like I'd say 5 years, we started getting into script writing, and we're developing scripts for film and TV. And you know, we've been, you know, that's kind of just naturally where we've been heading in regards to like the content side of things, because we, you know, we script out, you know, music videos, we script out skits, we script out advertisements. And so now it's like, okay, now let's script out some movie ideas, some film ideas. And so that's where we have some, like, you know, we have some comedies that we've developed, we have some dramas, and we got a horror story. So like we have these things that, you know, eventually, you know, when we get to a place where there's enough capital behind everything that we're doing, and our systems are in place where we can kind of step back a little bit, those are the projects that are going to be exciting to us, is, you know, producing those films.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. We, full enough, then not the next episode, but the episode after that, we got a guy on called Benjamin L. Newmark. He's been on a couple of times, and he comes on when he's got a new film to promote. Bless him, and he's got a new film out soon. And his company that he works with is DBS Films in, I think, Jacksonville in Florida. And they work around horror. You will have seen some of his stuff. You know, he's I've seen him on the Horror Channel a few times as well. When he's Attack of the Meth Gator is one of his films that he's in there. It's a very very entertaining film. I don't mind telling you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's cool. See, I mean, that, you know, that sounds fun to me. It sounds like something, you know, we enjoy being on set and, you know, basically running a crew and filming content. So it's like it's just going to be the next step for us, you know.
Yeah. No, I'd so, and this is all a part of creativity, isn't it? You know, when you if you're a musician, I think it's very natural that you want to branch out and try other things. Is that something that's covered in your book? Is you know, or is it purely directed at the music industry?
It's purely directed for the independent artists and for scaling their career. You know, that's really what that's about. All this other stuff I do is just because, you know, I'm a masochist in regards to like overworking myself apparently, and I like to, you know, jump into new projects. But you know, it's all these things that they're all relative, because eventually, you know, the idea is to have a massive media company that's a record label, you know, entertainment company with film and television and all that as well. So everything is under the ecosystem, and have our whole system in play through, you know, FanFlowy and our distribution, which is DistroFlowy, and PubFlowy, which is going to be our admin side. And all of these things will be the foundation to everything that we can continue to stack and scale on top of that, you know. Because the idea is eventually having enough capital to go after and start, you know, signing and acquiring catalogs from other artists, and then, you know, investing into them and helping scale them as well through our systems and our media, you know.
I mean, it's pretty clear you got it planned out. And, you know, just going back to what you said there at the very start, in terms of, you know, you plan things meticulously. You like to have things written down. you need things sort of scaled out and put down in paper in front of you, and that's clearly beneficial to yourself. Tell us a little bit about fan flow and things like that. Then tell us about the concept behind those.
Yeah, FanFlowy, is ultimately your CRM on steroids for the music industry, right? So there was a gap in the market which I saw because I wanted certain things done through my strategies on marketing, and there was actually no tools out there that would accomplish everything from A to Z for me. And I tried everything, and everyone says they're doing this or says they're doing that, and they're ultimately not. And so I started, messing around and learning automation systems and started building them myself for some of the initiatives that I wanted and some of the strategies I had. And then that turned into a back and forth with my other business partner who's been in this game for a long time. He's been in the automation systems and subscription game and in marketing, and this is where he specializes, but he's also a musician, right? And so it was good because he helped my company along the way. He's probably like my business partner, but he's probably my only like real one of my only real mentors I've had in the business world. And he's helped my team and I a lot as we were coming up, and now we've actually formed Make Our Music as a collective. And so he saw what I was building. I sent him back and forth. He'd send it back, and really work it and get it to a place where I was like, oh, okay. And it allowed me to learn. It allowed myself to learn the automation systems even more so. And then as we started to scale it, he saw exactly where I wanted to go with it, and then he brought his development team on, and we kind of built it from there. And so now FanFlowy is like basically your all-in-one engine for like fan growth and fan capture and fan nurturing, all the way from finding your fans through advertising, through organic strategies, capturing them into your fan list, getting their name, phone number, email, location, preferred sharing platform, and then from there, automated communications through email, text message, and DM that are already set up. And so once you capture that fan, they find you on a social media platform, they want to join your community, they want to join your fan list. We capture them in there, and then now you have direct access to them. And not only do you have direct access, now you have a system that's a funnel system that will email and text message and DM them to do all the actions that are needed to grow you as an independent artist. We'll get them, to a community so they start to meet other fans. We'll get them into a merchandise funnel, so now you're starting to make some money and make revenue. And then also to identify, potential super fans, people that are buying stuff are, most likely going to be a super fan. You can get them to a show. And then from there, we're going to get them to stream your latest release, get them to whatever platform they use, whether it's Spotify, Amazon, Apple, identifying that and getting them to take those specific actions. YouTube, subscribe, Apple Music, favorite, Spotify, follow, those are the things that matter. And then from there, have them learn more about the artist, the bio on the artist, the backstory of the catalog, right? Get them to dig deeper into the songs, give them stories about why you even wrote them, what inspired you, the process, what was that like? And then from there, get them to learn about the band members. If you have band members, if you're not a solo artist, and you get Q&As on that. And then from there, it just becomes a machine. You're driving people in every day, all day. They're finding you online. We're getting them in. And then from there, you're communicating with them. And then as you have new releases, there's an automation flow that will give them the initial announcement with a forever pre-save. They'll give them a week before release, the day before, the day of the release, and a week after. And then systems like that for, upcoming shows, new merchandise, all of that. So it becomes a machine, and it's set on autopilot. So once you set it, it's basically set it and forget it.
That's genius. That is genius, to be honest with you. In terms of building and driving uh, interest in your brand or whatever it is, because I mean that doesn't even need to be just as a musician. That would work over a number of things, wouldn't it?
Of course. Yeah, it'll work across any type of industry ultimately. Any especially any industry that you have fans, right? Obviously you can have customers and you can have the clients, right? And that would still work. But if you have fans, it's a way to like really nurture and connect on a deeper level with them and do it on an automated level because ultimately there's so much stuff you have to do nowadays as a creator, right? Whether you're hosting a podcast or you're a music creator or you're a content creator, you got to create the content, you got to distribute the content, then you got to find the fans. And then once you find the fans, like now what do I do? Right. So this is how we have it set up. And we also have a system set up so that the ad infrastructure works so well that you can get an understanding of like, okay, every 80 cents I spend it, I acquire one person into my fan list. And then every 100 people that come into that fan list, I sell, maybe 10 fan packs to them and then sell, out of that, those 10 people, 5 people will buy a t-shirt upsell. And then out of those 5 people will, 3 people will sell a mug, a coffee mug, right? So having an understanding of that, now you have a math formula at the top of the funnel. I spend X amount at the top of the funnel, X amount of people come through, and then I can see how many actions happen after that.
I mean that I'm impressed, dude. I am really impressed with that. That is the perfect way to engage people, and no doubt, you've got the statistics, you've got the facts there to back it up, so you can see if what you're doing is working or not, and if it ain't, you can change it up immediately. Yeah.
Immediately, yeah. So the data will tell you, and that was my biggest concern. Was like the whole music industry is built on like just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping something sparks, right? So you're ultimately just playing the lottery all the time, and so that's fine. Play the lottery. I tell everybody, play the lottery. Try to go viral. Try to get someone, try to create sparks, right? But in the meantime, you should have an engine that is guaranteed of if I spend X amount of money, I'm going to get X amount of fans, and there needs to be a situation so you have a cost per acquisition and then a lifetime value of those fans, like just like every other industry. And I couldn't believe that the music industry have never thought like that, and they didn't have anything set up for an infrastructure for that. So that's why we created it.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, to be honest. And certainly, I'd say 50 years ago, something like this would never ever work, obviously, because, like you say, the infrastructure just purely wasn't there for it. But the way that it's geared now in terms of streaming, in terms of engagement, in terms of being in touch with people and bringing people into your world, that sounds to me the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, and ultimately, once you get them into your world, you can get them to take any actions. I tell everybody, you want them to subscribe to you on YouTube. Now you have them. You could text message them. You could call them if you want, and have them. Once you have their information, you have that relationship with them. They will take any action you really ask them to. Right? If you want to get them onto your Spotify, you want to get them to your YouTube, you want to get them into a subscription channel where you're giving them exclusive access to certain things, live streams, early drops of music, merchandise they can only get there, early access to shows, VIP tickets. That is a real thing. And so, ultimately you can create a subscriber base as an independent artist as well.
Dude, yeah. It's impressive, but I'm gonna just to take it back to the actual raw talent and the ability and the music in itself. Without that, that kind of stuff is not going to work. Is it? If you don't have, I'm not going to say an ability, because there's somebody out there for everybody as well. It's music is a very personal thing. What you might like, I might hate, and what I might like, you might hate, and that's perfectly natural. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay. But there does need to be a degree of talent and ability there as well, though, doesn't there?
100%. Yeah, there needs to be a quality product, regardless of what genre it's in or whose taste it is. But it has to be a quality product for whatever that taste is ultimately, right? And so, like, that's the biggest hurdle. Is like, I get on calls all the time, and not everybody is ready for that, right? Because my biggest piece of advice is, I went through it myself. I had all these years of putting out songs that were probably demos, really, and then we ended up working with a really great producer and refined our sound, and then that set the bar for us, and then made us understand what the quality of what we needed to move forward was, right? And so that changed everything for us. And so I'll get on a call with somebody that their productions they sound like iPhone recordings, and they're not great, and they're the songwriting isn't great, and ultimately, but I hear potential, right? And I see where they're going with it, but it's like, okay, let's get you in touch with somebody that can help, right? And that's what I will do on that call. At least at the end of the call, introduce them to someone that can help them on a production level or a songwriting level, to then help get them, because that's where they're at right now. They just need that next step for that. Then maybe they circle back and come work with me, and I can help get them out to the market. But like, ultimately, there's been so many artists that I've met that maybe were like mediocre, but they just kept refining their talent, refining and working with higher level people to get better and get better. And then ultimately, they became great, but it took years. They weren't great naturally, right? And so it always comes down to the person that wants it so bad and is won't give up and is willing to continuously grow, right? And some people have a different starting point of where they're growing from. Some people are highly more talented, right? And they there's not a lot of growth that's needed for them to be in the spotlight, but they just might not have the thick skin for it, or they might just not care enough. It just might not be. So it's like a two-part. In order to be successful in this industry, you have to be tenacious. You have to never want to give up. You need to want it. It needs to be you. You need to love it, and you also have to grow. And you have to. And sometimes like failing fast is good. Like, put out a record, it is terrible and nobody liked it. Cool, grow from that. Figure out something else. And if you have access to people that in the genre that you want to be in, that are more successful, that have put out records that you love the way they sound, ultimately too, go work with those people.
I mean, it's solid advice. I feel like we should be charging right now for this podcast, because you give us some good advice. Your goal long term then. Obviously, you're a musician. That's what you do, and that's what you love. And I'm guessing you're never going to stop creating music. But do you see yourself long term doing music for and that's going to be your revenue stream, what you want to do, what you're going to take from it, or do you see this business opportunity as actually this could be the future for yourself, and actually it's a great way to go out and help a lot of people achieve their goals along the way.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's like I'm gonna make music, I'm gonna release music, and I'm gonna probably perform until I can't anymore physically, right? That's just how it's because it just is who I am. I've been doing it since I mean, I've been playing drums since I was like 11, 10 years old, right? And I've been performing since I was 14. And ultimately, that's just in my DNA. That's all I'm going to do until I can't do it anymore. And I love writing records and putting songs out and collaborating with people, right? And so that'll always happen. And ultimately, my business infrastructure allows me to do that. It creates a team around everything I do, regardless of the system in place, and it'll create the funding for everything I do as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, and it actually keeps me, in regards to my branding, it keeps me legitimate because I'm out there doing the same things that, these artists that I'm telling, giving them advice on what to do. I'm doing it, right? So I'm practicing what I preach. So they're going to go hand in hand forever. And ultimately, the goal is to build an infrastructure so big that, we become one of the biggest, entertainment and music industries, music companies out there in the industry. And that's, having the foundation that we're setting is very attainable ultimately, because we're starting with a different mindset and a different approach than, what's already out there. And I think because we're doing it that way, you know, we're gonna we're quickly gonna be a name out there that everyone's gonna be like, where'd that come from? But it's we've been doing it for a long time. So it might seem like an overnight success, but it's really one of those things when you look at the iceberg in the water, right? The foundation's been laid for years.
That's the truth, and you see that, I mean, what where you see or I see overnight success, it's no, that's where you've come onto my radar. The groundwork's already been done before I saw you, and that the preparation work's already been done. So I would suggest to anybody who's out there and is listening and they want to promote their band, they want to take it to the next level. This is probably the way to go down. Even podcasts, I think this could be something that people want to go down, because I can tell you this as a podcaster, I get countless emails a day, easily double figures, sometimes triple figures, of people telling me that they can promote my podcast, they can make me do this. We can be Apple top 10 all the time without any idea of how they're going to do it. They're just going to, this, you pay me money, this is what I'll get you. And I always think, bullshit.
Yeah,
I ain't
yeah,
clicking that link. But what you've shared today is an authentic plan and an idea behind it. And you've been honest and upfront and told us how you do it. It's very, very clever. It's very smart. And I certainly know that something like that is going to be something that's well worth investing in and looking at. I certainly think that would be the way forward. Before we close out, and before we go back and we show your book again one time and tell people where they can buy it, I just want to hear a little bit about about Prospect Hill, and what in terms of creation. Then what song that you've created, not necessarily your favorite, means the most to you, and why?
yeah. That's a tough one. We've written and produced so many songs over the years, and as one of the main songwriters, lyrically, the majority of our catalog are my lyrics, right? And so that's like, as the drummer, that's surprising to some people, but that's just how it's happened, right? And there's so many songs that just, when I look back, it's so funny because I can listen to the catalog and they take me back to a certain time in my life. So it's very nostalgic for me in regards to like phases of my life. So the songs, they do something different than they do for somebody else that's just listening to them, because they're closer to me, since the majority of them came from me lyrically. And so there, I look at the catalog and certain songs at certain like points in my life, whether they were highs or whether they were lows, but they're just, it's almost like it's having the ability to have almost like a memory, and have that, they're time capsules. Like these songs are time capsules to my life. And so I'm proud of all of them for certain, different reasons, right? Like there's one song that I was inspired by one of my best friends who's a Marine, and he was out there, fighting in Afghanistan in the Iraq war. And so that was something that inspired me, and I wrote that song about him. And so that, that was a one close to me about one of my best friends that, at any moment we were worried that we might get a phone call, and so that was one. And then there's been plenty of them that are about past relationships, and then there's ones that are, really just about like, events that have happened throughout the world that impacted me, news events or things that were big in regards to, like some mass shooting, stuff like that. There's certain songs that I've written about that. But there's our latest single that we just put out. It's called Blood in the Water, which was, a collaborative effort, which was really cool because it was a song that, I usually lead the front in regards to lyrics, but one of our songwriting partners really came to the forefront with it. And then I kind of remolded it and gave it a different new life and perspective because it was, I ended up having a different view on how we should take it, and everybody followed the lead, and we did, and we wrote it. And it is like an accumulation of like the band itself, right? It's like kind of like the theme song for the band. It's called Blood in the Water. And so I'm really proud of this one because it really tells a story, and we everybody had a piece in regards to writing it. So it was really a collaborative effort from all of us, and it wasn't really just like Derek and I writing a song and then kind of everybody else like learning it. This was really a collaborative effort where everybody was throwing pieces in, and I kind of guided where we were going to go and what the theme of the song was. But because of that, it ultimately explains Prospect Hill. It's like, it's telling the story of we've been together for so long and we never gave up, and we might never be that Metallica level famous, right? It might never happen, but we're going to keep going because there's a chance it might happen when we're dead. Might
Yeah,
happen after, because
yeah,
there's always that chance, and you think about all the greatest like artists, Picasso and all these guys, they, a lot of them they were broke their whole lives, and they weren't famous at all until afterwards. And they will never know that they were famous because they're dead now. But there's a satisfaction to knowing that, especially in this day and age, you can create something that can live forever.
Amen. Yeah, like the likes of Van Gogh or Van Gogh, I believe it's supposed to be pronounced. I don't think he barely sold a painting in his life. He was flat
Yeah.
broke. Nobody's
Yeah.
ever heard of the guy. And now, he's got his paintings are selling for millions. And yeah, it'd be nice to experience in your own lifetime. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, yeah, but I think the approach is you just do it because you love it, and you
Yeah.
do it, and maybe because you put so much love and so much realness out there, and you impact enough people that it might not be your time while you're here on this earth, but maybe it'll continue on, and then that's when it happens. So it's like having an understanding of that, and having peace with that is really what Blood in the Water is about, and so it's like one of those songs that I'm really proud of.
Oh, fair play, fair play. Well, I'm sure when we share this episode out, so the audio episode of this goes out in August, and I will make sure that when we share it out on Instagram or where have you, we use that tune to accompany it when we use the social media post so that people get to hear it as well. Although I'm sure many of them will have heard it before because I've seen on Spotify, you've got plenty of listens on there. That ain't a concern.
Yeah, yeah, we're doing all right. That song's actually doing very well right now. It's actually our fastest growing song ever on streaming, which is pretty cool.
That must make you very proud.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a testament to obviously the lineup changes, and understanding if that was going to work, because we took, we ended up moving on without our lead singer that's been with us for years, and Edgar, who's been our bass player and basically backup singer all these years, is now the lead guy. And so there was a transition there, and the fans had to get used to it. And the first three singles were kind of just like basically introducing it to the world, and it was, there was obviously some loss of fans because of, that's how it goes, and some fans were on it, some fans weren't, and we're just gonna keep going our way regardless. And this next single is, Blood in the Water, that we just put out, is it's 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 actually proof that, us sticking to our guns and saying, hey, we're going to continue on this way, and we're going to do it the way we want, and it being our fastest streaming song ever in regards to numbers and how well it's being received, is just proof we're in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that tells you everything you need to know. That tells you everything you need to know. 'Cause, you whenever you change anything up, I know what it's like. You have your doubts. You have your doubts that will this work? Could this work? Are we going to sabotage everything we've previously done? And
Yep,
when you get that level of reassurance, it's very, very, very satisfying.
for sure. Yeah.
In terms of what we've covered off then in this podcast, we normally wrap things up round about the hour mark. Anything we've missed out? Anything that you want to say?
I know. I think we did cover a lot. I think and I got
We
some
always
some
do.
some some good gems in there for some people. And ultimately, the thing that we're most proud of right now as a company is our ability to help artists, because the biggest question that I get from all of them is like, how do I get my music out there? And now we have a solution for them, and we have the tools that we've created with FanFlowy and DistroFlowy, which is now our distribution platform, to compete with TuneCore, DistroKid, and CD Baby. That's ultimately what we created. And so that's fun because that's in the market right now, and it's actually cheaper, and it has better deliverability than all the other platforms as well in regards to how it works, and then how quickly you can have customer service, because it's us ultimately. And so that was one of the gaps in the market we saw as well. So like we're just going to continue to expand our toolkit, through technology and through education for artists, so that we can help them and streamline their careers, because ultimately we're just kind of, we're finding things that we wish we had in the market and then creating it for ourselves to then give to everybody else.
Amen. Amen. That's the way to do it. So before we let you go, then I need you to let you share out some of the links where people can find you, whether it's FanFlowy, where people can pick up your book, where people can find you on Spotify. There's different things that people can look for, and obviously I'll add a selection of the links into the show notes on the audio episode.
Yeah, of course. You can find, the book, FanFlowy, DistroFlowy, all the links to that at makeourmusic.com. That's basically the hub for this company and everything that we do, and all the tools that we have out there for independent artists. And if you want to find my band, of course, you can go to prospecthillband.com, and that'll have all the links to all the socials, and all the new music and past catalog and our merchandise store. So those are the two I would say you can go. And if you want to find me on my Instagram, it's Mark_Bamo. Bamo, that's my nickname. And I think it's just ultimately because I beat up the drums. I think that's where that came from over the years. So, that's how you can find me personally. But ultimately, Make Our Music, is on Instagram. Make Our Music's on Facebook. It's on YouTube. It's on TikTok. So you'll be able to find them easily there. And then from there, all of our tools, all of the elements that that we continuously create, whether it's the educational, the podcast, because we do have a podcast as well, and the book itself, all of that is there. It's under Make Our Music umbrella.
Dude, you're a busy man. You're a busy man. I'll say that for you. You're not afraid to put yourself out there and have a go at it. And I wish you every success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on here. And I just realized I'm wearing my my London hat.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And I didn't plan that either. It was just, I love this hat. I've been wearing it. So it was very cool fitting.
It's a very nice looking hat. I'll give you that. I'll give you credit where credit's due. Unfortunately, I'm a man who doesn't suit hats, but that doesn't stop me wearing them.
Well, it was very nice to meet you, Beans. I appreciate you having me on here. It was a great time.
Absolute pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. So that just leaves it for me then to wrap it up and say thank you, Mark, for joining us. I hope that anybody who listens to this goes and clicks on some of the links we've added there in the audio, and hopefully goes and listens to a little bit of Prospect Hill on Spotify and takes a little bit away with them. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode as much as I have, and I will be back next week when I'll be talking about something entirely different altogether. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Friends around the mic, kicking back, all right. Day turns into night, podcast in the spotlight. Sipping on that brew, talking